Welcome again to Provide News. This is your second segment, and we have a special guest, and it's Jeff Greenberg. And this man is so accomplished. I can't go through all of the accomplishments, but the thing that jumps out to me is that he used to be a professor. He's a professor emeritus at Wheaton College, of professor in geology, and just so many. This man has so many things to his credit. It's you can't go through it all. But Jeff, thank you for coming and joining with us. You were on our first segment, and I love the involvement you have with your swirl, which is this really jumped out at me when you sent me the information, and it really gets to what we have talked about, that citizens have the capability of solving some of the problems that government thinks that only they can solve, and you have some solutions concerning the water problem here. And not only do you have some solutions, you're getting other people involved with it, not even down to the high school level. So tell us about this issue of swirl and what is it, and how can this be used in this area?
I'll try to make this fairly quick, but it actually began with the opportunity to obtain a National Science Foundation grant for community science. And I thought, boy, there's something we can do working with the IRL, because that's such a big, important deal. And got into that a little bit, put together a proposal to the NSF. It was not accepted, went through the University of Florida. But in the meanwhile, I'd been on a foundation board previously that gave us some money to start this up as a small pilot project. And what Searle does is what has been needed for a long time. It's been called for, but nobody's doing it. Of all the big organizations, the big universities, the major environmental organizations and others, and the state agencies, nobody is actually looking at our stormwater coming from the mainland as it enters the IRL and looking at what's in that stormwater, how much of it there is, and recognizing that that is a major contributor to the degradation, basically the ecological death of the IRL. And a lot of people have sort of gotten a sense, but we are starting to do something about it. And it's just a start. We're little and we're volunteer organization.
So who came up with the idea for this?
Well, probably me.
Oh, don't be shy there, Jeff.
No. I mean, I've been doing science projects and particularly working with students for decades and decades on public service things, international things, Eastern Europe, in Haiti, in East Africa, and other places like that. And back at Wheaton College, we had a water treatment program that we were running with students as the researchers. So I have a great passion of getting young people involved in doing applied science that serves the public good, and particularly in the case of a degrading nature because of us. So the idea here was, it just occurred to me, this is sort of a no-brainer. And I said, well, who's doing it? Let's look into it. Things started falling together. Eastern Florida State College has a campus here in Titusville. Mm-hmm. And in that campus, they've got some marvelous people that are on our team. We have a team of about 13 or 14 people now. And they have an instrument there that a former teacher, professor there had gotten, but that professor's gone. Now, this instrument happens to be a state-of-the-art analytical tool for measuring organic compounds. Story behind that is the former director of the Marine Resource Council, Dr. Soto, called for, we need to find out what's going into the lagoon. Mm-hmm. And we need to find out what pesticides and herbicides and pharmaceuticals and PFAS chemicals, what are these things? We know because people have spent money in the lagoon with problems, but they don't know where it's coming from. They don't have any monitor, so we are the first ones to really do this.
Wow. So what's unique about this is that you have high school biology professor instructors.
Yes, yes.
You have students, high school students.
That's right.
The combination. So this is really a unique entity that you have here, and it really solves a lot of the problems that government is trying to solve and really can't.
That's right.
Would that be far-fetched to say?
No, and I'll tell you, I mean, I have learned through decades of working with students that these are, if trained properly and supervised properly, these are junior colleagues. Mm-hmm. They're researchers. They're capable of doing wonderful things. I was a judge at the Brevard County Science Fair projects this year, and people would be amazed at how sophisticated and how brilliant some of these students have come up with things. And we want to tap into to the students as a labor force for good. Their teachers who are wonderful, wonderful people and willing to work with the students and to be involved, but also to go beyond that and realize that we're looking at communities here when we're talking about students. We're not going to outside experts. We're not going to overpaid consultants.
Right. Correct.
We are working on a shoestring with competent people. Our team is made up of very distinguished experts, of technicians, scientists, and these teachers. We have some of the best teachers, both from the junior college here, Eastern Florida State College, and in this case from Astronaut High School. But not only Astronaut, we've got interest from other schools. Like Edge.
Stella is happy with that. That's her
yes,
alma mater.
well, Edgewood over in Merritt Island is a very accomplished science high school, and their top teacher over there is very interested in what we're doing. So this has the potential to really grow and to incorporate students to learn. Students learning this technique of analyzing organic compounds will be immediately employable. And grad schools are going to be crazy for these people. Imagine doing this with students from, under disadvantaged economic communities, which we have a lot of those around here. And this is going to help those students get an opportunity that they wouldn't get otherwise.
So there's a multitude of benefits because you have the students that are involved, they're getting experience. The city or the area, the community is benefiting from the expertise of that experience. You have the government is not having to pay people to do this.
That's right. That's right.
You have one less thing that they're going to be able to manipulate people on. I mean, I could just see all kinds of benefits from this, Jeff. Am I wrong?
Well, again, I've got to be. We've had hurdles that we weren't sure we were going to get over. We've gotten past some of it, and it's moving extremely slowly. We're probably over 8 months behind where I hoped we would be. But we're a strictly volunteer organization, and we are working with pennies compared to a lot of the big organizations. This is really, this is about as grassroots as you can get. But I am impressed with the people I work with. They're wonderful people. They're devoted people. And a lot of folks will notice, with these wonderful colleagues of ours here, aren't of the same age generation that I am. But I'll tell you, a lot of the people I work with are retired or older who are now realizing I want to pay back. And I want to make sure that my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids have a better world.
Isn't that what the government was supposed to be about to begin with? Isn't that, that's really what,
idealistically, and yes, very briefly, I'll just say, when I first came to Titusville and I recognized this, and I had, in conjunction with the University of Florida, gotten the potential for this National Science Foundation grant, I came before the city council and I said, here's a great opportunity, city. I don't know you guys, but I want to give you the benefit of the doubt, and I hope you can be excited about this, because this could mean out of $1 million, the city could get a lot of grant money to help do some good things. And I was immediately shut down at that point. Well, as I found out later, because I pushed a little bit later on, do you really want me to go into some of the history of this? I will be careful. I wrote up a proposal actually further than this and trying to explain what we were up to after the first meeting that I had. And the first meeting, or it might have been the second meeting, the city manager basically told me we're not interested. And my question was, well, have you asked anybody? Because I'll tell you, there's a lot of interest in what I'm talking about, but he shut it down, okay? I think the mayor said, well, you need to talk to our public works guy. So I did. And that didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I could sort of sense resentment when I was talking to the head of the public works guy about stormwater.
So,
which I've studied for years and years and years.
So do you think he took it personally?
Well, I got hit personally later on because they sent me 20 questions to answer, which I could give to anybody to have a look at. Some of them were very cynical, things that they should have known already. But they were trying to, I feel they were trying to trap me into showing how this was complicit with something wrong, And I answered all the questions, and I said, in some cases, you should have known this already if you did your homework. I sent it back to them. And then later on, they had they had one of their council meetings when I was out of town, and they voted on it when I wasn't there to answer. Wow. And I was essentially slandered by two of the members on the city council at that point. Oh, it's on the record. What I'm saying right now is not
how long ago was this?
Oh gosh, it was about a little over a year ago, I think, about last July.
So this is recent.
Yes, this was.
And that's pretty interesting because I've seen many times where the council, even in Titusville, the council, where something will come up about a citizen's project or whatever, and they'll table it if the person's not there. So that's very interesting that they took this opportunity to vote on your project with.
I don't want to
you
be
not being
that
there.
cynical to say that they waited for me to leave town,
Right.
you know. But the fact
Jeff's
that
out
they
of
would,
town. We can do this now.
but they would do it with no representation for the project.
Correct.
I mean, this shows you again, forgive me, but this shows you the quality of the people that we have that are making these life and death decisions for us here and doing it very, very poorly.
So this seems like it would be a good example of a good private sector project that is solving real problems, right? That the government purports to solve, but never gets around to it.
That's right.
I mean, and so you just have this bureaucracy, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and nothing gets done.
The first thing I told them when I talked to them about this is, you can use us. You can look at us as an asset for your government because we can do things and we can go after grant money to do some of this stuff. This won't cost you. But there is an infamous quote. I won't give it because I wasn't there, so I don't have the firsthand, from one of our council members about the idea of sampling stormwater and measuring it. Maybe somebody else could actually give a verbatim report on that quote. I won't do it because I don't want to be off. I really don't. I wasn't there for that. But it basically just went to show that they were fearful that it would call them to be responsible.
I was going to say, so I've experienced and witnessed that there has been a lot of combativeness with the city and citizen science in general. And there's a lot of examples. My predicament last year with a former water resource director is one perfect example of that, where I got banned from taking water samples and I went through something very tremendous. But we recently had, there's another citizen in the city of Titusville, we're hearing, that was arrested for taking water samples at Sandpoint Park. And then there's been a lot of pushback with other citizens who are trying to really rise to the occasion and take samples and gather data and information, because that trust with the government has been eroded and people do not trust their science. They're not even testing for things like E. coli. They're not testing the stormwater. So what's your take on that, as far as how they're always trying to discredit and discourage citizen science?
Well, again, you know, I'm an outsider. I've only been here 3 years. But I've been making some great connections with wonderful, wonderful people and allies. And I shouldn't say shocked when you look at the state of politics in the nation today. And we're just seeing an extension of it. We're seeing an extension of bad politics.
So is it bad politics or bad people?
Well, you know, that's an interesting story too. If you talk to a sociologist, it's always the system that's bad. If you talk to a psychologist, it's the people that's bad. I mean, that's an academic. That's something I learned a long time ago. You know, but it's both. It's both, obviously. And but the idea, and it is rather obvious if you look into a lot of the issues, and there are many of those that are there, that the favoritism towards the developers is a matter of money. And you have to figure out, where's that money coming from? You know, I mean, and then where's it going? You know, how is it benefiting these people who are making bad decisions? I mean, we already mentioned, for example, the supporters for some of the candidates that are obviously real estate and developer people.
Correct.
Not public citizens, not the grassroots
Correct.
people in their little houses at $5 a piece.
Correct.
You know, so the public needs to know this, and enough people need to be aware. It's easy to get angry. It's also easy to get discouraged. But I'm hoping, again, that enough of the word would get out from this once we start probably rolling pretty good around the end of August into September, when school's back in and we start to have students involved. We start getting this, we're going to start creating data. We're going to start getting numbers. And that data is going to be available to everybody.
Great.
This was another thing that the city had a trouble with.
Oh, I'm
They said,
sure.
who owns that
I'm
data?
sure.
They said, who owns the data? Like, everybody's got to own something.
Right.
I said, you don't understand it. You know, good science isn't owned. You know, this is not a corporation we're talking about. We're talking about the public. And I'm going to give it to any agency, any organization, anybody who wants to use that data to understand what's happening. Because right now we're guessing a lot about what's with the IRL. You know, there are some other good things happening. I can tell you one of the other sides of what we're doing is studying the amount and quality of the actual stormwater itself flowing from all the outlets. There are thousands of outlets flowing from the mainland into the IRL that are not natural. And we know that the dilution...
And just qualify, explain to people what the IRL is.
Okay,
so
the Indian River Lagoon, that
Okay.
wondrous body of water that's right... We call it a river. It's not really a river. It's a coastal lagoon.
Okay.
And it's one of the most precious ecological systems in the U.S. and maybe even the world. And it's been so badly degraded over the last few decades for all kinds of reasons, you know. Human sewage being one of the bigger issues, but more than that.
So why, Jeff, why have you found, or have you even heard that there's a problem? I mean, this seems like a very simple solution, right? Why is who is someone being protected that they're not coming up, they're not dealing with this problem? Why is this such a problem? I mean, you've had politicians come and go, and no one seems to come to a solution.
Well,
how to fix this problem?
Again, I love Florida. I grew up in Florida. I can tell you, regardless, and you know, this is interesting because this stuff should have nothing to do with political parties.
Right.
Correct.
Because these are issues, human issues, and issues about things that are health oriented. They shouldn't be political parties. But the political parties, we won't go into who or what, have taken a stake in making our habitat, our life on this planet, secondary to financial increases for the few. And I think we're seeing some of that here. When developers can manipulate, when they can go to planning and zoning and get people to change zoning that's been done for a good reason, simply because those people vote on it, you know, after they've talked to their perhaps handlers who've told them how to vote. That is not a good system. We talk about America the Beautiful and we talk about justice and our democracy. That's not a democracy. So anyway, I'm not a politician. I'm a scientist. And I'm hoping again, the last thing I wanted to say was where you even want to find out about the amount of fresh water that goes into the Indian River Lagoon, because the salinity of the Indian River Lagoon has been diminished over the last 15 years, such that a lot of the marine life that we love out there, including things like some of the sea trout, they can't reproduce anymore because the salinity is too low, because there's too much fresh water. The idea is, in our own environment, I haven't mentioned this, but one of the great things about our city, about Titusville, is we have a Titusville Environmental Commission. The city council doesn't listen to them.
Right.
The city council doesn't like them because they tell it like it is.
The city council doesn't listen to very many people.
I know, but this is their own commission, however.
Yeah.
And when this came up and got voted 5-0 against swirl, the Titusville Environmental Commission voted 6-0 in favor of swirl. So you've got these opposing, and so which one is in our best interest? And the stormwater issue, we're seeing down in Melbourne right now, they're starting to turn some of that water away from the IRL and put it back into the St. Johns River Basin, excuse me. And that is something that we want to spend money on something for the betterment of this community. We could start buying up some of this property and preserving the wetlands, using the way that, forgive me because I'm also a person of faith, that God intended. You know, science intends it, but God also, you know, I think the ethical thing is that there's a lot of things that we can do that make a lot of sense. And I'm optimistic. I think we're going to move forward with this.
Well, on that note, we're going to end. And how can people get in contact with you, Jeff, to talk about your program, Swirl, and
well,
what you're doing?
Right now, we need a web page or do something like that. I haven't done it yet.
So you have Jeffrey.Greenberg at Wheaton.
.edu. That's my email, and that's the best way to contact me. That is correct. And at some point, I think we'll actually have a web page. We are connected to the IRL Roundtable, which has a web page. So we're on there, and we're also on a couple of other web pages most people don't know, but my email is the best way to contact.
All right, Jeff, thanks for being with us. It was a great interview. I love the program. I love the private aspect of it and doing things that the government cannot do. And we really need more of this kind of citizen involvement, and it can answer some of the problems that we have in Brevard County. Thanks again for being with us. Thanks, Dale. Thanks, Katie. It's been a wonderful week. We hope that you have a wonderful week coming up. And remember again to like, share, and subscribe our podcast. Have a wonderful week.